Yo, welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, we got a special reaction video that's called Every Major Presidential Mistake That Changed America Forever. And this was a very, very interesting video that I had in mind. That seemed very interesting because I like history. I like presidential. Like, I probably could name all the U.S. presidents if you ask me. But I haven't done that in a while though. But yeah, that was really cool. It's this YouTuber named Agent Flappy. I think he has like, I don't know, like 33K subs. So yeah, something like. But let's go check it out.
Driving natives from the South in death-filled marches, to watching the country crumble into civil war, to locking Japanese Americans behind
Wait, what?
This is every major presidential mistake that changed America forever. And some of these are so catastrophic, we're still dealing with the fallout.
Really?
Like John Adams.
John Adams, second president?
Had America nearly trip and faceplant right out of the gate. Because the U.S. signed a peace treaty with Britain, France's sworn enemy, and the French were furious. So, rumors swirled that French agents were sneaking into America to stir up rebellion. Newspapers
in the 1700s?
Influence and spies hiding in plain sight. How did Adams handle the pressure? Well, you'd think a founding father would defend liberty. But instead, he panicked and signed the Alien and Sedition Acts. 4 laws that basically said, if you're a foreigner we don't like, we can deport you. And if you criticize the government, we're gonna throw you in jail. Yeah, so much for that whole free speech thing.
That is not good.
It totally blew up in his face, because the public turned on him, and his rivals, like Thomas Jefferson, rode the outrage.
Bro, no wonder why he didn't get that second term.
Adams set a dangerous precedent. That in times of national fear, presidents can crown themselves kings and strip away civil liberties. In that little playbook, it got plenty of use. During the Civil War, both world wars, even the War on Terror. Kind of funny how the guy who helped write the rules for America was the first one to break them. But while Adams flip-flopped on freedom, Thomas Jefferson ended up shooting himself in the foot.
Wait, what?
Sinking America in the process. Cause in 1807, Britain and France were locked in the Napoleonic Wars. And even though they hated each other's guts, they agreed on one thing: bullying American ships. What the heck?
Wait, what?
Both sides were seizing U.S. cargo, kidnapping sailors, and treating America like the scrawny little kid of the Atlantic Ocean.
Okay, brother. Okay, buddy. I don't know why Britain was messing with us back then. Because if a new nation could beat a nation was around for hundreds of years, then they did something wrong. I don't know if they did wrong, but they did something wrong. And Britain seemed to be in a war all the time in the early 1800s. It looks like right after this war, they decided to go over the War of 1812. They said, "Oh my God, we lost another war. Time to fight America again." Like, bro, they love being in wars in the 1800s.
So Jefferson hatched a plan, a peaceful one: shut down all U.S. trade with foreign nations.
Terrible idea.
If we cut them off from American goods, they'll come crawling back to us. But in reality, Britain and France barely noticed. Meanwhile, back home, American ports turned into ghost towns. 30,000 sailors lost their jobs, and smuggling went through the roof. It was a full-blown backfire. And after 15 miserable months, Congress pulled the plug on the embargo.
15 months?
Dang heads of Thomas Jefferson. Because by then, the economy was wrecked, Britain hated us, and America was inching toward its next big disaster, the War of 1812.
Exactly.
But
I
if
should
you
say
thought that was a grave misjudgment, that's nothing compared to Andrew Jackson, who turned a presidential mistake into a tragedy written in tears. Because Jackson was a war hero, man of the people, and someone who did not like Native Americans holding onto land that white settlers wanted. So in 1830, he pushed through the Indian Removal Act. a federal law that gave the government power to forcefully relocate entire native nations, like the Cherokee, Chickasaw, and Seminole, from their ancestral homelands in the Southeast. Families who had lived there for
Yeah.
centuries were suddenly told they had to leave. But wait a second. The Supreme Court actually ruled the Cherokee had the right to stay. So,
Really?
victory, right? The natives are safe.
No.
Well, not so fast. Because Jackson allegedly shrugged and fired off one of the most infamous lines in presidential history. John Marshall has made his decision, now let him enforce it. Translation, cute ruling, I'm ignoring it. And what followed was the Trail of Tears, where thousands of native men, women, and children were driven hundreds of miles to what's now Oklahoma. And roughly 4,000 Cherokee died from disease,
It sucks,
starvation,
man.
and relentless weather along the way, leaving a permanent scar on America's story. But this wasn't just a humanitarian crisis. By clearing the land, Jackson opened millions of acres to cotton farming, supercharging slavery deep into the South and planting the seeds for a future crisis. And
Yeah.
those seeds, oh, they didn't just grow. They exploded. Because
Still
3
don't-
decades later, the slavery debate reached
Yeah.
a boiling point. And
Still
instead
don't
of
understand how
dealing with it
cotton's
head-on,
grown, though.
James Buchanan
Like, I
sat
still-
back and watched.
James Buchanan.
Because in
Yo.
1860, Abraham Lincoln won the presidency, and James Buchanan was counting down his days left in office. But down south, panic was spreading like wildfire that Lincoln would limit slavery. So before Abe could even pack his bags for the White House, one by one, southern states started seceding from the Union. And suddenly, the United States, the very nation the founders had bled to create, was teetering on the edge of collapse. And Buchanan's response? Secession's illegal, but also, I can't do anything about it. So, he did nothing.
Bro.
Literally. Dude, wake up! Meanwhile, the Confederates
Bro,
were-
James Buchanan's the most useless president that America has ever had. Okay, maybe. I don't know. But every time I hear about James Buchanan, he just did absolutely nothing, bro. He was president for no absolute reason, bro. I'm pretty sure if you look up, like, the worst, like, presidents, because I looked it up before, I'm pretty sure he's, like, number 1 or number 2 or something like that. Like, bro is, like, so bad, bro. But imagine, though, that the South won the Civil War. Bro, imagine how, bro, we would have the United States, probably, and then we would have the Confederate States. So, that would be crazy, bro.
anything but lazy. They seized federal forts, stockpiled weapons, and got organized. Because by the time Lincoln took office, 7 states had left the Union, and the country was on a collision course to civil war, which ended up being the bloodiest chapter in American history, claiming over
Yikes.
600,000 lives,
600,000,
destroying cities,
bro.
and leaving the nation torn in two. This wasn't just your average presidential misstep. It was a travesty of epic proportions that echoed for generations. But the Civil War blunders didn't stop there. Because after the North won, Abe Lincoln had a bold plan to rebuild the South and secure rights for millions of freed slaves. It was a glimmering, hopeful moment until tragedy struck, and Abe Lincoln was assassinated, causing Andrew Johnson
Oh, here we are,
to
another
inherit the White House.
useless
And his
president.
plans, well, they were pretty much the opposite of Lincoln's. Because within months, Johnson pardoned thousands of ex-Confederates and handed them back control of Southern governments.
Disgusting.
Handed them back control of Southern governments.
Bro.
Who wasted no time.
Bro, how did why did Abraham Lincoln pick Andrew Jackson? Andrew Jackson, literally, nobody liked him. I'm pretty sure he's one of the lowest approval ratings of all time, bro.
Passing black codes, which were laws designed to keep African Americans as close to slavery as possible without actually calling it slavery. But Congress fought back, pushing civil rights bills through. But Johnson vetoed them.
Of course
So
he
they
did.
fired back and overrode his veto. But he vetoed them again. This political ping pong dragged on.
Bro,
until
yeah, he got
Congress finally had enough
overruled.
and impeached him. Although he survived removal by a single vote. In the
A
end, though,
single
the
vote.
damage was
Oh
done.
my god.
Due to Johnson's relentless stonewalling, Reconstruction collapsed. Black rights went mostly unprotected, and the South slid into nearly a century of segregation, racial violence, and disenfranchisement. This was a
Unbelievable.
haunting missed opportunity the nation still wishes it
Andrew
got back.
Jackson, one of the
But
most
if you thought the
useless
post-Civil
presidents
War
of
era
all
was
the
soul-crushing,
times.
imagine this. World War I finally ends. The guns fall silent. And on the negotiating table in Paris sits the Treaty of Versailles, which at its heart contained the League of Nations. President Woodrow Wilson's grand vision for a
Woodrow
global
Wilson.
alliance that would keep the world from ever plunging into war again. But back home, the U.S. Senate wasn't buying it. They're especially wary of Article 10, which could drag America into defending European countries without Congress ever declaring war. So they made Wilson an offer. We'll ratify the treaty, but with a few changes.
What's
And
up?
Wilson responded, absolutely not.
Bruh.
No changes, take it or leave it. So the Senate left it. The U.S. never joined the League of Nations. And without America, the League was a paper tiger. Big on speeches, a little short on teeth. Because when Germany, Italy, and Japan started breaking the rules in the 1930s, the League could do little more than wag its finger.
Yikes.
So Wilson's stubbornness didn't just sink his own pride and joy. It set the stage for the nightmare he was trying to prevent, World War II. But
Yikes.
before the Second World War went down, this next president
So we could
faced a
we
different
blame
kind of enemy,
Woodrow
the
Wilson
Great
for that?
Depression.
Herbert
And
Hoover.
completely
Oh,
botched it.
look, it's the 31st
Because
president.
in 1929, the stock market imploded, banks crumbled, and unemployment soared. And into this chaos stepped President Herbert Hoover, armed with the wrong plan. Because his big move was the Smoot-Hawley tariff, a record-high import tax that, in his mind, would protect American industry. But instead, backfired spectacularly. Because other countries hit back with tariffs of their own, causing global trade
That's
to
what happens.
grind to a halt. Meanwhile, millions of Americans were desperate for relief, but Hoover flat out refused. A staunch capitalist to the core, he rejected the idea of giving direct federal aid to the unemployed.
Bro, what? Yo.
Charities and local governments
Look at
can
him.
handle it. And turns out, they couldn't. Because unemployment rocketed.
Whoa.
at 25%,
What is that? Nah.
families huddled in shanty towns so bleak, people nicknamed them Hoovervilles.
Hoovervilles.
Stinks. And Hoover's colossal misstep didn't fade into history. It rewired America's expectations of its leaders, cementing the belief that in times of crisis, the federal government must step in to stabilize the economy, a principle that still guides policy today, which would have made things easier for this next president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Oh, look, it's the
who
32nd
inherited an
president.
economy in free fall and promised Americans there's nothing to fear but fear itself. But during World
What
War
did he
II,
do?
FDR succumbed to fear of his own. Because after Japan's surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, rumors of Japanese-American espionage spread like wildfire.
Oh,
And as a
yeah.
result, FDR signed Executive Order 9066, which authorized the forced removal of 120,000 Japanese Americans from their homes
Dang.
and into internment camps, located in remote deserts where families endured dust storms, blistering heat, and isolation.
What?
There were no trials, no charges. Their only crime was their ancestry. But after 3 years
Wow.
behind fences, the Supreme Court ruled against the detention of loyal citizens.
3 years? Wait, 3 years? This was the beginning. He signed this at when he got the Pearl Harbor got bombed? He was dead by the time they got out? Great.
But the damage to lives, communities, and trust in government would last for generations, as one of the most shameful chapters in
Bro,
American history came
Har-
to a close. But speaking
or
of
Har-
scary times, I almost my pants when JFK
Uh-oh.
drove America to the brink of World War III.
Sorry, huh?
In 1961, a young, charismatic John F. Kennedy walked into the Oval Office, only to be pitched what the CIA swears is a genius plan. They said, we'll send Cuban exiles to overthrow Fidel Castro.
Oh.
It'll be quick, easy, and best of all, totally deniable. Kennedy was intrigued, yet cautious. So to keep America's fingerprints off the mission, he scaled back the planned airstrikes, cause his big concern was maintaining secrecy. But that secrecy came with a cost. Because when the exiles hit the shores of the Bay of Pigs, disaster struck. They were outgunned, outnumbered,
Oh.
and stranded without the promised air cover. With no reinforcements and no way out, the fight collapsed in just 3 days, leaving most of the exiles captured or dead. It was a humiliation
don't think that was
on
supposed
the
to happen.
world stage. And worse, it shoved Castro right into the arms of the Soviet Union. JFK was furious at the CIA for overselling him the plan and vowed to never be blindsided again. Because when the Cuban Missile Crisis hit a year later, that hard lesson helped him keep a cooler head and the world out of nuclear war. But the US couldn't stay out of war for long. Because after JFK was assassinated, LBJ stepped into office with the Great Society dream. A nation with civil rights for all, Medicare for the elderly, and schools that gave every child a fair shot. Sounds pretty good. But on the other side of the world, a small conflict in Vietnam was brewing. And Johnson didn't want to be the president who lost Vietnam to communism. So when the Gulf of Tonkin incident erupted and American ships claimed they were attacked by North Vietnamese patrol boats, it was the perfect pretext for LBJ to seize the moment. Because Congress handed him the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, a blank check to wage war without a formal declaration. And Johnson didn't just cash it, he went all in.
Oh my God.
In 1968, over 500,000 American troops were in the jungles of Vietnam. And this war turned into a total disaster, consuming 58,000 American lives, millions of Vietnamese lives, and ending in a bloody stalemate.
Yikes.
Back home, America was tearing itself apart with mass protest, soaring government distrust, and a rising tide of anti-war fury. No more war! No more war! In the end, Vietnam left Americans questioning not just the man in the Oval Office, but the very office itself. But if there was any shred of trust left for the president, it went up in flames with Richard Nixon. Because in June 1972, 5 men were caught creeping into the Democratic National Committee's offices at the Watergate complex. And they weren't just petty burglars. They were tied directly to Nixon's re-election.
Wait, that's what the Watergate means? Yo.
Campaign. But instead of owning up to it, Nixon went into damage control mode. Hush money exchanged hands.
There we go.
And he ordered the CIA to pressure the FBI to ease up on the investigation. The cover-up became the crime. But no one was 100% sure Nixon ordered the cover-up. Until 2 years later, the smoking gun tape emerged. And on it, Nixon's own voice proved he was in on the scheme from day one. So, facing certain impeachment, Nixon did the unthinkable and resigned. But Watergate didn't just sink his presidency. It shattered public trust and left a legacy so infamous that Gate became the universal label for scandal ever since.
Really?
Let's just hope we don't hear about Agent Flappy Gate anytime soon. Am I right? Well, although this next president...
What is that supposed to mean, buddy?
He did get America involved in something far more destructive. The Iraq War. Because in the shadow of 9/11, fear and fury gripped America. And George W. Bush had weapons of mass destruction. So in 2003, the U.S. invaded Iraq. Baghdad fell in weeks. Saddam's statue toppled. And victory was
Dang, that's a big statue. Where'd that land on?
Never appeared. Sir, it turns out we were duped. And what followed wasn't peace. It was years of insurgency, sectarian bloodshed, and a new breed of militants that eventually became ISIS. But the Iraq War wasn't just about the trillions spent and thousands of
Is he dumb or is he not dumb?
It torched America's moral authority on the world stage and riled up anti-establishment sentiment at home. But if you thought Bush's Iraq blunder was wild, wait until you see a reporter throw shoes at his head. Because this is every U.S. president's weirdest fact. From nude swimming to wrestling beatdowns to vomiting on foreign leaders.
Ew.
U.S. presidents sure did some
Oh God. Who might watch that video next? But that's every presidential mistake. What the heck? Bro! That's every presidential mistake ever. Not really ever, because he missed a lot of presidents, but he got a couple. Anyway, I thought it was a pretty interesting video. What do you guys think? Comments below. Anyway, bye.